Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens one on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 452. Hopefully, you guys had an amazing Saturday. I had a pretty good day myself, even better evening because we're hanging out with Equilibrium Genetics tonight. Jason, how you doing? You want to tell us how you're doing, and of course, where we can find you?
Good. Yeah, doing great. Hope you're doing good. Thanks for having me on the show. We're at uh, Equilibrium Genetics on the web. You can just Google search that. You can find us there. We're on Instagram as at EQ Genetics. Yeah, I'm super excited to be out here. Yeah, I had a pretty good Saturday myself. So yeah. Um, uh, you know what were you thinking about learning about equilibrium today?
Well, we what I do here is get a chance to
Hmm.
get to know the people behind the IG a little bit. So
Hmm.
kind of hopefully, if you're willing to share your cannabis journey, pretty much from start to to current is what we
Yeah.
usually do here. So
So
my first question right off the bat is when was that first time? When did cannabis enter your life?
um I would have been midway through high school. Just decided to try it out, and I got just off the bat super involved in just what was going on, like on a national level. I think there was a lot being talked about with uh, Proposition 215 in California, as an adolescent for me, and that was something that captivated me. Watching that, I grew up near Washington D.C. in Northern Virginia, and national politics was always kind of on the center stage growing up. Right next to the nation's capital, and um, there was a lot going on where the federal government was kind of fighting with California over Proposition 215, and that was going on and hitting the news at a time when I was in high school. And so I think like getting introduced to consuming cannabis and cannabis policy really kind of came at the same time for me at an early age. Um, and uh, I didn't really get involved in the cannabis movement at that age. Kind of got into the festival circuit where I would go around to music festivals, and I worked for some different vendors, and um, kind of got to uh, see a lot of the East Coast up and down, and meet lots of different people and see people running their own businesses in different sorts of ways, where there'd be somebody selling tie dyes and somebody selling some other thing, and I kind of got an introduction to small business and people that just wanted to go off and do their own thing, which is very similar to doing your own seed company. Is just kind of um, uh, uh, trying to you know stake out your own claim in whatever industry you might be interested in. And I feel like that was a really important time for me. But somewhere along the way, I was at a cannabis or not, I was at a music festival, and somebody handed me a cannabis flyer for a protest in DC. And I was looking at the thing and took it home and just kept looking at it. It's like, I got to go to this thing. And that just one event really sparked a whole different path in life. And I ended up getting involved in a group called Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and got super into organizing at my local community college. And we were holding all sorts of events. And one of uh, the bigger events that the group held ended up being out in San Francisco. And a bunch of students from our community college went, and we ended up at this big national conference in San Francisco. And I was introduced to some people that were running dispensaries in the Bay Area. And that's kind of what roped me in even further. I wasn't just doing policy. Now I moved out to the Bay Area, and I'm actually working at a dispensary, seeing it from a whole different side. Uh, and uh, I feel like each step of the way, I pick something up from, working at the front counter, at the dispensary, running around, getting to put in, a hard day's work at these shops. You're on your feet all day, and also getting to kind of see like where the rubber hits the road, where all these policy things I've been talking about on the East Coast, and we got to legalize it, and uh, trying to support the movement in all these different ways, coming out and seeing it actually in action as a bud tender, was something that was really valuable. Actually getting to talk to a patient, and because it was all patients back then. We're talking like 2010 is when I came to Oakland, and um, it was really uh, fulfilling to be able to do that work and be the person that was providing this medicine to all these patients that would walk through, and you'd get your regulars and you get to know people, and um, got to see the Bay Area, which was so different from where I'd grown up in DC. It was a really valuable experience, and I really enjoyed living there a lot. And um, when I left the dispensary, it was like I had already, you know, collected a ton of seeds and been making my own crosses kind of on the side. And I just kind of got into it with less than, you could imagine, just kind of being like, I want to do this, and just kind of putting in all the effort into just like, I'm going to start making more seeds than I have, and really jump in, and, um, trying to make clones, and save different phenos of things that I like out of my own seed stock. And it was something that just would never have been available to me to be able to do that where I grew up. It's changing out there now, but even 10 years ago, it was a whole different world back there on the East Coast. And um, that's a lot of the history. There's lots of other things that happened in that time span, but I feel like that's a good summary of how I ended up out here making seeds. And um, it's been a wonderful place, especially in that time, because it's different now, because anybody could walk into a dispensary with a tray of clones back then. And at that shop that I worked at, I worked at Harborside Health Center in Oakland, by the way. And so when I was there, we would have all kinds of different things that would end up on the shelf on the clones counter. And we had a huge list of seeds we were selling at the time, and you never knew what was going to walk in the door, what was going to be the next, you know, strain. And things are not that way anymore, where um probably most of those people that were making clones aren't even doing it anymore, or who knows. I hope they are. But um uh, a lot of those varieties that we saw come through the door are ones that people seek out now, like the purple Urkel cutting, or whatever it might be. And um, so it was a really special time to be collecting clones and collecting seeds. I really enjoyed, my time growing on a rooftop in East Oakland, making seeds, with clones that I collected from friends and different dispensaries around the area. And um, I really think that small scale breeding is always going to play a role in um, the cannabis, as it's available to everyone. I think it's really important. I talk to a lot of people, and I feel like people don't give themselves enough credit sometimes, of like, you can do it. You can do cool crosses on your own. And I always try to encourage people that I meet to, like, just go out. You don't know what you're doing, just go out and do it. And you'll be able to figure it out as you go. Every year you'll get better, and just try to really encourage people to be just more confident with uh growing and breeding, and just if you put in the work, you're going to be able to learn from any of the mistakes that you do make and make less of them in the future. And um, it's super fulfilling and a lot of fun. So um, that's uh, a little bit of the history. I've lived in Santa Cruz County for a while. I lived, in San Mateo, and bounced around to a bunch of different places where I was making seeds here and there, and um, really just trying to preserve strains, I think, is what I've kind of landed on now. Is the things that I've collected, I want to be able to preserve them for the future, and um, just trying to make sure that I don't let a lot of things get too old. There's some things that we tried to sprout this year that just wouldn't. That it always makes me sad when there's something that's like, oh man, I can't get these to sprout, and it's something that, like, I think about, like, oh, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna get these to sprout, or is that just it for this certain variety? Did I let them get too old? And it's certainly possible. So whenever I get something that's old to sprout, I'm always really excited. Um, and just making sure that they get everything they need, you know, uh, so you don't lose something like that, and make your F2s or F whatever they may be, and keep them around for some more years. Um, we were able to do that with some Ethiopians recently, that a friend collected 20 years ago on a trip there in the Ethiopian highlands. um, and we're playing with a bunch of things. I've got a lot of different things we're going to play with this year. We're going to do some purple projects. We're going to do some indica projects. We've also got some of the heirloom Malawi crosses. We're going to do a Cali Miss Malawi crossing to a number of things this year. Try to keep that more on the sativa side. The indicas are going to be some purple crosses, and also pure indicas, pure Afghanis crossed to other purples. But we'll, release more about what we're going to have for next year's lineup, in the next few months. But we've had, a lot of people enjoy a lot of things we made in the last couple years. Uh, it's always neat when I get an email from somebody that's enjoying a strain that I made 6 years ago, and they're still growing it right now. I'm like, oh man, I gotta pull some of those seeds out, or whatever it might have been. Like, it kind of almost like, oh yeah, I'd almost forgotten about those. And we grew some sour cherry Kush this year that had been one we made a couple years ago, and it was another one of those that did really well for a few people, and I'd kind of forgotten about. So we're gonna work with it a little more this year. We sprouted a ton of seeds in the spring, and just did some pheno hunting through them. I feel like I really like smaller batches of seeds to really be able to pheno hunt right. I mean, doing it with hundreds, where I'm at right now, I feel like I get in over my head, and I don't really feel like I give every plant the attention it deserves when I'm doing hundreds. We kind of had that happen a little bit last year, where it's like I think we had 300 banana glues that we were looking through, and like 150 African orange, and um, it's a lot of work to take that many cuttings and keep that many cuttings alive, and then let all your plants flower and wait till the very end and smoke the finished product to find your favorite phenos, and then keep those cuttings. I feel like I can accomplish it a lot better with smaller numbers. Um, Maybe you won't get, the the diversity in the phenos that, if you had done dozens upon dozens, but I just feel like I get to hone in on the traits of each plant and give them a lot more attention that way, where if it's maybe 2 dozen plants versus 200. But yeah, uh, it's been a really interesting couple of years with cannabis here. We got a lot going on. I'm just happy to still be here doing this and still making seeds for people.
So, man, what a interesting start to your cannabis journey there. But so let's rewind it a little bit.
Thank
Let's
you.
rewind back to the beginning here, man. And I appreciate the political start on it, by the way. And I wish, to be honest with you, medical would have made a greater impact before recreational started sticking its fangs into it, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So uh, I I appreciate you helping keeping the medical thing or help getting the medical thing started early on in
Mm-hmm.
your career. So
Yeah.
w- that first time must have had a pretty good impact on you to take such a stance, such a charged stance to cannabis. So what was the initial uh when was the initial grow take place? You know what I mean? When did growing come into your cannabis journey? And then what actually sparked that? Was it, the need to produce your own cannabis, quality cannabis? Was it, uh, what was it that sparked the first grow?
My first grow was I sprouted a bunch of seeds from Mexican brickweed uh, in my parents' basement in it was like a box that we had kept our artificial Christmas tree in. It was like some long Christmas tree box, and I put some fluorescent light on it. The plants had zero chance of actually making it all the way to the end. Like I think my parents discovered it within a week. And I just remember my dad coming to me and saying, "Are you going to take care of them, or do I need to?" And I'm just like, I know exactly what that means is you have to go kill all of those seedlings in the basement because they're not going to grow there. Um, and that was my first experience. And so coming to California and really being able to feel like you know, you can grow with relative confidence that you're not going to end up in some terrible situation as long as you're not, of course there have been lots of things that have happened to people growing cannabis in California, but I wasn't growing some giant amount. I moved to Oakland and was growing some plants on my rooftop, and it wasn't some sort of scary situation other than being in Oakland in general, which you could just gotta watch yourself and how you conduct yourself in a urban environment like that anyway. But um it wasn't like living in Virginia, where especially when I got involved in drug policy, it was just always this feeling of just like you got to watch yourself and what you're doing, because like stepping out and being an activist kind of makes target out of you. And so uh, there was something very liberating about coming to California. I was just extremely excited about it, and being able to just have the opportunities that are out here that weren't out there then, which are kind of starting there now. But I feel like California style medical cannabis, it would have been really nice if we had been able to have that across the nation before all this big legalization. Because medical cannabis in Virginia meant the board of pharmacy licensed 5 giant shops to open. And I'm thankful that there is access and that those shops are there, but I really enjoy the culture aspect and the way that you support the culture is by having lots of different people in the environment rather than a very, very small number. You know, where if the bar is set too high, you can't have enough participants to really have a cannabis culture going on. And that was what was great about the way things used to be, is where anybody could jump in because there were no rules and nothing was allowed. And so, you know, anybody could, you know, jump in and write an article for High Times or get involved in some kind of way. But now it's getting more and more narrow, and I'm hoping that the culture will be able to persist through these more difficult years, because it's my prediction that things are going to get easier. They're not going to stay at this ultra high, strict, regulated level. I think the restrictions inevitably are going to be, well, maybe not inevitable, but I think the people are going to want it, and they're going to want things to be a little bit more accessible as far as licensing. And we've seen some states like Oklahoma do it in a way that's very easy for somebody to start a small business without that much. And just, you know, they had a different ideas, just let the market play itself out. You know, the people that are able to keep it going will keep it going, rather than trying to pick who gets to play, which is what's going on in some of these cities where they've got bids for, you know, we're going to put out 4 licenses in this city, and you get 100 applicants, and there's all these different people vying for these 4 slots, you know. And um, I'm certain that they've got their arguments for why they must do it that way, but it would be um, really neat to see more of the opposite, where, you know, a county like Mendocino is pretty much giving out licenses to anybody, you know, anybody that applies. And there's no limit on the number of dispensaries that are allowed to be in Mendocino County, which is not the case in some other counties. And so um, we've seen, I think Ukiah has a 0% tax. Um, and we're starting to see, I think Santa Barbara has a 20% tax on top of the state tax. So it ends up being taxed over 50% by the time you know, it gets to the eventual consumer. And that's on top of whatever markup from the wholesale price from the actual producer. So, you know, the price can quadruple from wholesale by the time it gets to a consumer in some cities in California. And um, that's, you know, if patients are the one that started this whole thing, you know, if it was about making sure cannabis is accessible, having burdensome taxes is definitely getting in the way of that. And just people have less money in general now. It's been a very interesting couple of years, and so it would be nice to have some kind of like bounce back from all these kind of overreaching cannabis laws, where we have the grassroots maybe is what's going to have to do it, or the grassroots rallies and kind of reforms into new groups that push for legalization 2.0 and say, okay, well, my state legalized, but I can't do this, this, and this costs too much, and there aren't enough producers because they made the regulations too tight, and I want to be able to have cannabis dispensaries in other zones in my city. I don't like the way that my city zoned everything in the, you know, a lot of the cities push all of the cannabis licensees into industrial areas and out of the more public areas, where you've got liquor stores all over the city. And so I think legalization 2.0 could look like a lot of different things, but um, hopefully it's going to just be more normalizing cannabis. And like, we should be able to have a cannabis store anywhere that you could have a liquor store in town, or really anywhere. I don't see a problem with having them anywhere. But you know, maybe there's some caveats to that, but um, in general, I think that it's overly restricted, and it's going to take time where we get new people into office that don't see it in the old framework as this is an illegal drug that we're unleashing, to more of the more reasonable way to look at it, that this is something that's been around forever. You know, cannabis is older than laws themselves, and people have had a relationship with cannabis going back thousands of years, and it's something that you can't just suppress, and it won't just go away. And furthermore, I don't really think it's reasonable to want to make it go away, and that it has a place, and um, the people that wish to consume it have, you know, a right to have an affordable product. And, you know, if they want to take their try at getting into the industry, they should have not some crazy time trying to do it. You know, most of these places, you know, you got to have millions to even have a shot at opening a shop or starting a business, you know. And that was something that I saw in Oklahoma that I really liked, that they made the license fees really low, and you see a lot of small businesses kind of duking it out in the different cities, and you see a lot of shops, and that's the way it should be. um, and and you know, I'm also you know, somebody I really like to go to lots of cannabis events and meet with, you know, all the different people that are out there. And um, there was something that I felt that, you know, I would go to the Emerald Cup every year, and that year at 2017, where it was the end of Prop 215, um, there was just something special about that year. It was almost like everybody knew that it was like the end of an era, and that there was going to be this new highly regulated system that nobody knew what was going to happen, was kind of on the horizon. And it was a really beautiful event, and I really enjoyed myself. And I'll always enjoy going to the Emerald Cup, but there was really something special about that year, and it almost kind of felt like a last hurrah of like everybody getting together and being able to do this thing the way it was set up, was that lots and lots of people could participate. And um, you still get that, but I feel like we're going to have to like kind of roll with the punches, where, you know, this new regulated system kind of put a damper on the community and the kind of the community feeling that we get when there's lots of different people that are involved and have all sorts of things to say about the situation or whatever's going on with cannabis. To um, now we've got many less, you know, so many of my friends from back then just don't even have a cannabis business anymore. Lots of people that I knew were doing things 2017 and prior, have totally moved on to a different industry. And um, I'm hopeful that the community will be able to bounce back from that. And um, that's just what I refer to as legalization 2.0. It could be a lot of different things, but hopefully it's going to mean more sensible regulations that make it easier to participate.
Is there a way, in your opinion, that we can put medical back to the forefront and kind of slow down recreational hair?
Um, I don't know. I mean, could it be that all use is medical use? You know?
I've heard that argument. I've heard that argument,
Hmm.
and I agree with you. I agree with that. I truly agree with that. But legislation is different. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Legislation is completely in the your rights are completely different from one side to the other. I mean, in fact, it's a joke. I mean, here in Michigan, people are quick to abandon the medical system here that built the whole system here in Michigan anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes from producers and everybody. As soon as they get the chance, they bail in on the medical market and hit in the recreational market. It's less regulations, you more they can do more. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it's sad. Even here as a home grower versus a caregiver like myself. Okay. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
caregiver here in Michigan. I'm allowed to have myself plus 5 patients. That's 72 plants. Okay. And even with that 72 plants, as a caregiver, you're only allowed to have 2 ounces per.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, 2.5 ounces per. So, which works out to be 15 ounces, which no arguments there. That's enough. You keep your patients full enough to have on hand. But me as just a Michigan residence, now
Mm-hmm.
I can have 12 plants recreationally. And if I grow 50 pounds with them 12 plants, just, for numbers sake, whatever, that's allowed. I'm legally allowed to have that in a closet if I can produce, show that that came out of my recreational garden and that's mine and I'm just keeping it for personal use, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if I call it medicine now, whoa, 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 them kind of numbers for RSO and to make it medicine now, that's crazy. That's the adjustment that I'm seeing here. And it's saving lives on the medical side. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, I mean it is a medicine no matter how you use it. Don't get me wrong. Even if you're using it recreational, I'm sure on some level you're using it for a medical reason, even if it's just to escape for a little while. But it's just unfair. I would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we would have seen it go from coast to coast medically first, because I've said this a bunch of times. I'm afraid the recreational market will just completely squash the medicals in every state, and then the home grow, our opportunity to produce our own medicine, sustain ourselves, will be ripped right out of our feet. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
always more concerned about trying to keep the medical in the forefront, because I'm that's what's going to keep our home grow rights, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Uh so
Well,
your
yeah,
thoughts?
you touched on it. Yeah. Hold on here. I'm gonna go plug in. Um, but that's you touched on it. There's home grow rights, and I feel like um, because it's recreational, a lot of states have decided to limit recreational more than medical. Um, and in California, you can have 8 ounces if you have your recommendation, and you're only allowed to have one on your person if you aren't medical. And the also the places you're allowed to medicate are, you know, far more than if you don't have your recommendation. There's really only two places you're allowed to consume cannabis, which is like in a private residence or in your own home, or a private establishment that allows people to consume cannabis. Um, if you have your recommendation, you're pretty much, um, allowed to medicate in far more places than where um, you'd be able to consume it if you weren't medical. And I feel that with grow rights, a lot of states aren't even allowing home grow. And whether, I feel like it's really about, people's access to cannabis. And whether it's somebody wants to have it be medical or if it's recreational, I just want to make sure that people have access to be able to grow it for themselves and um, have an amount of medicine or cannabis that would be adequate. I really I don't really care about restrictions. It doesn't concern me. I'm not like walking down the street thinking like, oh no, does somebody here have too much cannabis? Like that wouldn't ever bother me, and um, it apparently bothers some people to think that somebody has too much cannabis. And so um, that is something that hopefully will change, is that people's attitudes towards cannabis in general will become more relaxed over time, and we'll stop worrying about whether somebody has more than an ounce. Somebody should be able to have, you know, how many, packs of, 6 packs of beer can somebody go buy and bring home? The answer is you can fill your entire trunk with it. You can, as much as your car can hold, you can go buy at the store and fill as many fridges as you can fill in your house with it, and nobody's going to have a problem with it. It should be the same with cannabis. And um, hopefully we'll get there someday, but we're definitely not there right now. Um, and it takes public attitudes to change. Um, I also kind of skipped over a whole period of activism that I was involved in Santa Cruz County when I lived there, and it was pre Proposition 64. We hadn't legalized in California yet, and the county was considering changing um, some of the rules. And um, they had been allowing people to cultivate depending on how big their property size was in a local ordinance. And there were some discussions at the county level to basically shut all that down and ban cultivation, except for a 10 by 10. And people would only be able to grow 10 by 10s. And so everybody was up in arms. All these people that were growers were wondering what were they going to do? Was everybody going to get chopped down or what? And it mobilized the community. And I got to see political action on a local level and meet all sorts of cool characters that were in the cannabis scene at the time. And it was a really wonderful experience. And um, uh, the culmination of those efforts was a referendum. And in California, if a law is passed, voters have a 30-day window to gather enough signatures to block the implementation of the law. And that's called a referendum. And if you get enough signatures, then the governing body can put it on the ballot and have a special election to let the voters decide whether they want that law to exist or not. And we were able, the county passed a cultivation ban countywide. No growing unless it's a 10 by 10 or smaller. 10 square feet or 100 square feet, 10 feet by 10 feet square. And we were able to get 11,000 signatures in 21 days and overturned a ban from happening in the county. And it was a really triumphant moment for us. And it certainly saved a lot of people's gardens that year. And it taught me a lot about what it takes to actually get stuff done. Like, political action can take a lot of work. And that's why you don't see grassroots stuff like, unfortunately, CCHI, the California Cannabis and Hemp Initiative, they haven't been able to, really make the ballot. And it's because getting enough signatures in California is like you need like 2 million signatures to get on the ballot. It's like you know, it's a lot of money to be able to run a campaign like that. And so the people that have the money to do things like that often have a very different mindset from whatever the grassroots might want. And um, we saw this happen in Ohio, where we had this group, Sensible Ohio, that was trying to pass legalization there. And they were trying to pass it as a constitutional amendment to the state constitution in Ohio, which would, if it had passed, would have made it very hard to get rid of it or even alter it. And thankfully, it narrowly failed. But what it was going to do was it had 10 locations that was going to be written into the law. These 10 farms are going to be the only farms allowed to cultivate cannabis in Ohio. That was like a warning sign to me that something's not right with, you know, there was a time where I feel like all the groups were aligned, and as we get further along, different groups get further out of alignment with uh, what they want to see in legalization laws. And these folks wanted to be the only ones allowed to grow in the whole state, and they tried to pass it as a constitutional amendment to lock them in as the only growers in Ohio. And it failed. And thankfully, that didn't take place. But that's, a far cry from trying to, create opportunities for small businesses in cannabis space and allowing people to have more cannabis, allowing people to grow more cannabis for themselves. That, it's a totally different mindset. And so what I learned in Santa Cruz really helped me see like, okay, doing this type of stuff really takes a lot of work. And um, you have to have a lot of people in alignment trying to, affect, some type of change, on a state level like that. Um, and sometimes it is good to, start local with those types of things. And with California's law, there's definitely some leeway for, local, you know, counties, cities to write their local ordinances in a way that kind of ease the burden of some of the things that the state has done, where like you see in Ukiah that has a 0% tax because they want to attract businesses there. But other cities like Santa Barbara, they said, no, we're going to do a 20% tax. We know you want to open up shop in our town, so we're going to make it really high. Because we're not going to have any shortage of, people trying to apply to open a shop in our city. And so it's hopefully going to get, better as time goes on, as people just get more used to having cannabis, and having cannabis shops, whether they like cannabis or not. It's part of the community. And hopefully that's something, that we can see happen. It's just normal, making it normal. So yeah, yeah. Um, uh, yeah, it's been a really interesting time, just seeing all of this happen in the past few years. And now it's kind of like, where are we at now? It's not even state politics now. It's federal. Like that's what we're on the cusp of, is federal legalization. It's being talked about. These things are being crafted now. And yeah, definitely I have to encourage everybody to get more involved and just see what's going on, and contact your you know your reps in DC. Whoever represents you in Congress, you got to get to figure out who that person is and where they stand on national legalization, because there's some talks going on at the national level that involve everybody, that's in cannabis in any sort of way across the whole nation, and they have broad powers to do lots of different things that could alter our rights here locally. And um, we might not like all of those things. Um, and there could be more taxes. There could be a whole nother license level that, oh, you got to get the county permit, now you got to get the state permit, oh, now you need the federal permit, and who knows how hard they make that to get. And so there needs to be people from all over contacting their reps saying that we're watching what's going on, this affects us. I would like to see you, representative so and so, please vote this way. Just, you got to put in those calls, you got to write emails, starting local organizations that get involved on the political level, with numbers rather than just you by yourself, just kind of organizing locally with other people that like I really like stuff like that. Just grassroots. If you don't feel like any of the organizations that exist represent you adequately, and you have a different twist on what's going on, start your own group. Get other people with you involved. There's lots of room for that, and I feel like people just should have more confidence in doing things like that, because if you don't know what you're doing, you can learn. I had no idea what I was doing, especially when I first got involved in SSDP. I remember the first time I went and set up a table at the school, I was so nervous. I just remember how nervous I was. I just had these butterflies, and just it got easier and easier, and eventually it landed me a job in the Bay Area, and then eventually, I ended up later moving to Santa Cruz and starting a grassroots group with a bunch of other people and doing a referendum. It was the first referendum for anything in Santa Cruz in 11 years, and it was the only one involving cannabis. And I feel like that was a really huge achievement, that group of people that came together. I was glad to be a part of it. And it just started by renting a room at a local community center and making little 1/4-inch flyers and handing out stacks of flyers at all the dispensaries. That's how we started that group. It culminated in preventing the county from banning cannabis. Like, it was something that you'd sit around, like, hanging out with your friends talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this and stop this from happening. And you know months, year and a half down the line, however long it was, um, we actually had enough to stop the county from doing something like that. And it was really cool to be a part of. And it just was really apparent that it's like, yeah, if you put in the time and the work, and are dedicated to it, you can do a whole lot of things. And grassroots organizing for cannabis, I think, is needed a lot now for home growers' rights, and you know rights of people that consume cannabis, to not have overbearing rules. you know you should be able to consume it anywhere you can smoke a cigarette. As just off the bat, you shouldn't be prevented from consuming cannabis. Like, if they've got a cigarette smoking room in the airport, why can't you spark a joint in there? Like, because we're not allowed to have it. And so that's something that federal legalization happens, maybe you'd be able to do that. I mean, you can certainly drink a beer in an airport, you know? And so I feel like that would be a really cool day to be able to reach, because we're still not there. And talking about medical rights, like, there's a good possibility that state medical programs could be altered by whatever happens at the federal level. And so um, uh, there's also talk about writing federal rules in a way that leaves all the state programs intact. For some, that might be a good thing. For other states, that might be a bad thing. But yeah, just getting more involved on that level, I think is there's so much room for that right now. And you know, as far as you know, what's going on right now, I feel like it's a super critical time that we're going to see some big things put in place that are going to be part of the structure of how cannabis is regulated for a long time. I mean, the last federal change to cannabis laws happened in 1970. The last like significant change was the Controlled Substances Act was passed, which listed cannabis as Schedule 1. And it hasn't moved from that framework since 1970. And so if we're about to have some major change, it's likely that whatever gets put in place is going to be part of the system for a long time. And so, you know, it's a good time to get involved because we want to make sure it happens right. So that it's something I'll definitely be watching more and more. It just every year it seems to be more likely to happen. Who knows? Maybe it's not going to happen this year. Maybe it doesn't even happen next year. But it's the clock is ticking, and it's going to be sometime soon. Maybe it is next year. You know, I never thought Virginia was going to legalize, and here it is. I've got friends that are like showing me pictures of their 4 plants in their backyard. You know, everybody's allowed to grow 4 plants in Virginia, which I'm just beside myself that that's the case now. And I think people are allowed to have an ounce. I'm not exactly sure the amount that they're allowed to have, but they're allowed to have 4 plants. And I've got all these friends just that are elated that they get to grow their 4 plants on their back porch. And you know, of course there's some rules about how they're allowed to grow it or where it's got to be out of sight or something like that. I'm not super well versed on what's going on with the specifics there, but I I wouldn't have thought that it would happen even in 10 years from when I left in 2010 till now. I wouldn't have thought, but here it is, and it's the case. So federal stuff might seem like far off, but it might also not be. I think we've got the momentum for sure. I think that what's really going on is people planning in the background on the federal level about how to do it and what way they want to do it. And so it's definitely a good time to chime in and get involved. So yeah, really, really excited about all that because the more people that are allowed to grow, the more we're going to be able to preserve all these different cool strains that are, you know, part of the cannabis genome. I feel like that's, you know, the backyard breeders play a huge role in that. Like, and it's my favorite thing about the whole like cool like getting together at like some kind of scene like at the Emerald Cup or some other cool, you know, cannabis event where getting to go and, you know, hang out with my friends and see what different seeds people are making, you know, it's it's a lot of fun. And it's, you know, the seeds don't last forever. They get older every year. You got to preserve them. You gotta keep making more of them or they disappear. And so that's the important thing, you know, that I feel like no one breeder can cover all that ground. There's too much out there. It takes a whole community to be able to preserve all this stuff out there. And uh, I love, you know, being able to be in the mix and, you know, to jump in the water, you know, and be part of it. And
You
you
hit
know,
you hit kind of a trigger word. Community. I feel
uh-huh.
the cannabis community is the medical community, and I feel like the
Mm-hmm.
cannabis industry is the recreational side of things. And you get, and
Yep.
you kind of said, you spoke of, hopefully it comes fast on the federal level. I mean, I'm usually pretty optimistic. I try to be optimistic as I can, but on
Mm-hmm.
with the federal legalization of cannabis, I am terrified. That's one thing I can honestly admit to being terrified from, because I'm right there with you. My dream, and I want to stop right here again and thank you for your and everybody else's effort in the activism part side of things. And you're right. The underlying thing is stay informed and active in this, because the
Mm-hmm.
fight's not over, not even close. I mean, here in
Mm-mm.
Michigan, recreational's barely been here for a year or two, and they're already just scrambling to take away the caregiver and the home grow. And it isn't even
Mm-hmm.
on a federal level. We're not even on that federal level. And this is what
Mm-hmm.
terrifies me the most, is the fact that marijuana, or our side of marijuana, cannabis, uh, is wholehearted. I can tell you, right? I can tell from talking to you, your heart is 100% in the right place. You know what I mean? As far as this fight, no doubt about
Mm-hmm.
that. But as far as the federal legalization side of things, I'm scared, because if it comes fast, it's going to be for all the wrong reasons. The lobbyists will push it fast before
Mm-hmm.
we have a chance to get proper legislation done, to
Mm-hmm.
where we can retain our rights to grow and everything else. Medical cannabis scared the shit out of from big pharma, tobacco, and
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. The three biggest lobbyists there is. You know what I mean? So, do you really believe in your hearts of hearts that they're going to sit back as they sit right now and take a beating on all fronts? They're just going to, put their tails between their legs and fold it up? Hell no. They're reverting back. They're going to either put their money against cannabis or all for it. And if it's all for it, they're going to be the ones in the forefront, of recouping their losses and taking out the home grow. And at that time, we're going to be like screwed. We are going to be screwed, in a big way. So the federal legalization, that scares me. And even now, as you kind of touched on yourself, if and when they step in, shit, I just knocked my tray over. And if and when they step in, it could be a complete reset. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? It may be a hole on the whole system. We have to may redo everything. The people that have spent and built the
Mm-hmm.
forefront may lose everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Regrouping and starting over. Why the big three are just steamrolling over us. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why I've always said, man, the medical has to come first to retain the proper cannabis rights. I understand what you're saying, that
Mm-hmm.
it should be available for 100% reasons, recreational. There is some medical use either way, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the going to be the medical right side of things that are going to get things done properly by the canna community, not the cannabis industry. That's I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. That's my I don't know. There's a big difference between the two, too. By the way, we're the cannabis in community, the cannabis industry. It's all about that dollar and how fast they can get us to consume and all that. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that's gonna be part of it, because they're a lot of the driving force behind, what's being uh proposed. So um those big groups are going to be the ones that kind of get it formed the way that it's going to be written. I feel like if people don't get involved, they are definitely going to write it without you. And even if you get involved, they might write it without you anyway. So it's kind of the situation that that's US politics is like that, where there's a lot of big players that have different ideas about how they want it to look. And um you know unfortunately, that's the kind of the way it is here, that those bigger groups you know weigh heavily on whatever ends up being written. And um yeah, hopefully it's written in a way that is inclusive of all. But yeah, that they're gonna get their hands in it, and uh be able to capitalize on federal legalization. One of the main things that's going to happen is going to be stocks. People are doing cannabis stocks through Canada and other countries right now. There's no US cannabis stocks. And um, once that becomes part of the equation, what is that going to do to how the industry works? It's just going to bring in more big capital and more big players, the ones that are still holding off because they don't want to get involved. Once federal legalization happens, there's no barriers to getting involved anymore. Other than how hard it is to run a business, there's no more legal barriers. There still is that looming last legal barrier. If you're in California, it's still federally illegal. But once that's taken away, it's going to kind of maybe make more sense for even bigger groups to get involved, much bigger than the ones that are currently involved. Maybe that's when you see Amazon get involved, or whoever. And what does that do to there's all sorts of different factors to consider. And I feel like the community is going through difficult times right now. And the good thing about it, though, is that the community is resilient, and it's going to be able to make it through some of these strange times that are going to come out of federal legalization. And hopefully it's able to persevere through that and make it to legalization 2.0, is whenever these things are rewritten in various states, or altered or edited. If there's amendments made, hopefully it's of the type that make things more accessible, easier for people to grow, easier for people to consume, make it easier to share medicine, and easier to preserve the genetics. So I see that is not exactly how it is now, but it's just, we can be hopeful that that's something that will be able to happen in the future, through grassroots activism. So yeah, I've had a great time this evening. Thank you for having me on the show. It's definitely a wonderful discussion about all things cannabis.
Well, I appreciate you having you. I didn't even touch really on the genetic side of things, but maybe another time. I greatly appreciate your time. That's for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, totally. Yeah, maybe we'll be able to delve a little bit more into that or have a round two. I'd be happy to come back on.
Right on, right on. Well, a couple of things before you go, I'd like
Hmm.
to pass on to you. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't know if you've taken a little bit of time to look over the channel, but there's three
Hmm.
versions of the show. There
Hmm.
is the Spotlight Show with me, and of course, there is the Wormhole, and again, the Organics Takeover with Smiley's Garden. But I'd like to give you an offer or extend your invitation. Once you do the Spotlight episode, that
Hmm.
makes your invitation good for any Wormhole episode that you feel like popping in on. The
Hmm.
Wormhole is basically open to all past guests. You have to be a past guest to jump in
Hmm.
on the Wormhole. And that's, well, tonight's 452. So that makes an ever mixing a conversation. So
Uh-huh.
hopefully one of you can join in at some evening. I mean, the conversation
Cool.
is all over the place. To catch a wormhole, it works a couple ways. Monday nights is
Hmm.
always a mandatory wormhole night. That is Monday at 2 a.m. is when that starts off, Eastern Standard Time. Uh, and then if any that wormhole is also any night where an episode falls short. Basically, the time slot for the show goes from 11:30 to 4:20. If we don't make it that long, then I pick up with the wormhole. So, and that means your invitation starts this evening. So, uh,
Thank you.
anytime you want to join in, feel free. You don't need an invitation. Hopefully, I don't feel like I have to go, hello, Jason, you want to join in tonight? It's not the way it works, not in any
Hmm.
shape, way, or form.
Hmm.
It's if you want to come, you know.
Hmm.
You see something we're talking about and it interests you, or you have some genetics that you'd like us to tell us about, come on and tell us, you know what I mean? What better way than to hear it straight from the breeder himself and to tell us about what gear is available. So, again, hopefully you can take me up on that. And again, hopefully we could do another episode, dive deeper into equilibrium genetics. I kind
Hmm.
of gathered it isn't just you. It sounds more like a team effort because every time you reference it, it was a we. So I would love to hear more about the overall project in general.
Hmm.
So hopefully you will come back either
Yeah.
on the spotlight or wormhole. The other thing I'd like to get from you is what a silly thing I call the soundbite. A soundbite is like a radio commercial, if you will. Uh, but like you would hear on any good radio station, the artist identifying the station. Basically, in my words, my version, it would go, "Hey, this is Eagle, and I'm on fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 452. You can do whatever you want with it, just as long as that has that in it. You can plug your genetics afterwards, whatever. Make sure to make it your own. It's the only part that I will record. Uh, Starting now, my friend. If you could give me your soundbite.
Hey, this is Jason with Equilibrium Genetics. Uh, on, let me try again.
Take two.
All right, this is Jason from Equilibrium Genetics on Talking Shit with Eagle.
Right on. Thank you, my friend. And again, where can they find you in your genetics?
Locations across the state of California. It's on eqgenetics.com. Click on the locations tab. It'll pull up all the different shops. There's a whole map there. So yeah, just go on the website, check it out. Lots of different pages for all the different strains too. We got latest drops up there. Always, changing the website, keeping it up to date. We make sure it stays up to date, every week or so. So yeah.
Well, again, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll get to chat again soon. So, for the rest of you guys, that ends it for this episode 452. Catch me in the wormhole. We'll pick it up at 2 a.m. So that'll give you plenty of time to fill your drinks, your trays, and get ready. And again, Jason, thank you for your time. Everybody else, you guys know the deal. Random acts of kindness do save lives. Don't be afraid to reach out and help somebody. That does it for this episode. Thank you again, Equilibrium Genetics. We are out of here. Have